I made this on a plane. Okay, I'm going to dedicate this. This is my grandfather's yahrzeit today. Natan ben Abraham Halevi, 42 years ago. So Yud Bet Iyar, towards the end of Yud Bet Iyar it is now. We are in the penultimate parsha of the book of Vayikra, Parsha Behar. Very, very small parsha, very rarely read. Has everyone got sheets? Who hasn't got sheets? Just show your hand. Okay. So very rarely, not that rarely, but it's not too rarely read as one parsha alone, very short laning. And most of the parsha is about Shemitah. It's about the Shemitah year and the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael as we come towards the end of Sefer Vayikra. Next week, Be'ezrat Hashem, we will have a Brit. Parashat Bechukotai will be the Brit before we leave Har Sinai at the beginning of Parashat Bamidbar. Parashat Bamidbar is always a bad sign for me because it's towards the end of the Northern Hemisphere year. We rarely get past Parashat Shlach. I don't think we'll get past Parashat Shlach. It'll be Nassau will be your last, just the second Parashat Bamidbar will be your last Shabbat here. We have the MTA. How are the sheets going? Are they making it? And Tess, do you have yet? Okay. Now, even though I could very clearly emphasize and discuss the fact that the Parsha is only about Eretz Yisrael, I think the Parsha is actually about Eretz Yisrael, Am Yisrael, and Torah Yisrael. It's about all three. I'm going to start with Eretz Yisrael. We have different types of Kedusha in our Jewish lives. We've spoken about it before. We have Kedusha de La'ela and Kedusha de Latata. We have a Kedusha which is a Kedusha that comes from upon high. It's an inherent Kedusha. And we have Kedusha de Latata, which is a Kedusha that is created by human beings. Shabbat is Kedusha de La'ela, right? Shabbat is Kadosh. Shabbat will always be Kadosh. Shabbat is Kadosh whether you like candles or you don't like candles, whether we make Kiddush or we don't make Kiddush. Shabbat is Kedusha de La'ela. And that's why on Shabbat, the bracha we make on Shabbat is Mekadesh HaShabbat. Mekadesh HaShabbat, because God is Mekadesh HaShabbat. When we come to Chagim, to festivals, we make the Kedusha of a festival because we are Mekadesh the Chodesh. And therefore it's Mekadesh Yisrael V'Hazmanim. That God makes us holy and we make the days holy. That's Kedusha de Latata. Eretz Yisrael is inherently holy, meaning Israel, the land of Israel, will be holy whether we live here or we don't live here. There's a holiness to this land that appears in no other, and therefore, wherever we may come from in the world, Shemitah is irrelevant. It's not something you have ever experienced until you come here. And it's a bit of a challenge in the Shemitah year. A couple of years ago, we had a Shemitah year because the fruit are kadosh. You can't throw them away when you finish eating them. They have to go into a special garbage can for Shemitah produce. And if you've been born and bred in Chutz La'aretz, you don't know any details of Shemitah at all because it's not really halacha l'maaseh at all. Shemitah fruit are not meant to make their way to Chutz La'aretz. You're not allowed to send Shemitah fruit to Chutz La'aretz. They have a kedusha to them. And this is an area of halacha that is unique to the land of Israel. So let's start with Eretz Israel and have a look at the Kuzari. Maybe some of you learned this piece in the Kuzari with Rabbi Akiva Weiss. So Amar HaChaver, as you know, the Kuzari is a dialogue between a king and a person who is describing and answering his questions about Judaism. A king who eventually converted. Amar HaChaver, Kol mi shemitnabeh lo nitnabeh ki im ba o ba'avura. Anyone who ever prophesied, either prophesied in the land of Israel or about the land of Israel. Hinei nitnabeh Abraham kedei she'yavor ba. Abraham prophesied about Israel before he came to live there. Yechezkel and Daniel ba'avura, and Yechezkel and Daniel who prophesied in Chutz, but they prophesied only about Israel. And they were already around in Beit Rishon, and they saw the Shekhinah, they saw the divine inspiration that was there, the Ruach HaKodesh Asher b'hamtza'ah haya hamagia l'nevuah kol hamuchala me'asegula. That gave people the ability to reach a level of prophecy. Prophecy is a very high level of relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But Adam HaRishon, he hayta admato. Adam HaRishon lived in Israel. Uva mate, and there he died. Kasher kibanu ki b'ma'ara arba'a zugot, because in Ma'arat HaMachpelah we have four married couples, and the first married couple is Adam and Chava. They are buried in Ma'arat HaMachpelah. Adam v'Chava, Abraham v'Sara, Yitzchak v'Rivka, Yaakov v'Leah. And you're going to Rachel in Bethlehem. V'hi haaretz hanikret lifnei Hashem. Sometimes when I speak, I notice on faces that I think Baruch Hashem, most of the people in this room, if not all of the people in this room, had good and comfortable upbringings in various lands. The lands that we grew up in were very kind to us and looked after us, and we feel them to be our homes. And when I start speaking in this way, I suddenly see the Berlin Wall go up in people's face. No, it's Woodmere. He's talking about Woodmere and Woodmere's home. This isn't my point of view. This is Emet La'amito Shel Torah. This is Jewish Torah. No one argues with this. Even the Torah Carta don't argue with this, with the inherent holiness of Israel, as opposed to anywhere else in the world. It doesn't mean that you can't find God anywhere else in the world. But this isn't Bnei Akiva Torah. This is Torah Nakuda. This is Torah Nakuda. Lifnei Hashem, and only Israel is called Lifnei Hashem. Anywhere else is not Lifnei Hashem. Tamid Einei Hashem Elohecha ba. God is presiding over what happens in Israel, and in Israel alone. In other places, there are media through which God presides. And the Kuzari says that this was the bone of contention between Cain and Abel, was Israel. Which was going to replace Adam HaRishon, who was going to take his place in Eretz Israel, to inherit the land, and what happened, right? Because Cain killed Abel, and the Malchut was left without. And Cain was sent away from this land. He was sent into Galut. The first ever Galut happened with Cain when he was banished from the land of Israel, having killed Hebel. And also, as we all know the story of Yonah that we read on Yom Kippurim. Yonah didn't want to carry out the word of God, so he left Israel. Because his connection with God would deteriorate, would become diluted when he went out of Israel. He's purposely left Israel in order to dilute that relationship so he wouldn't have to carry out the word of God. He escaped, ran away from a place of nevuah. And God sent him back in the belly of the whale, right? As he sent him back, he brought him back to Israel so that they would reconnect. And Shet, as he's known in the English Bible as Seth, when he was born, ויולד בדמותו כצלמו היה במקום הבל. Shade replaced Hevel because Cain was banished. כמו שאמר כי שת לי אלוהים זרע אחר תחת הבל והיה ראוי שיקרא בן אלוהים כאדם וזכה לארץ ההיא שהיא מדרגה למטה מגן עדן. And he was זוכה בארץ ישראל, which is one level down from Gan Eden, ועליה נתקנו יצחק וישמעאל ונדחה ישמעאל. Over that battled Yitzchak and Ishmael was banished from the land. He was sent away לרשת משהו אחר. אף על פי שנאמר הנה בירכתי אותו והפריתי אותו בטובת העולמית. Even though he was given many good things, Ishmael, ונאמר אחר כן ובריתי אקים את יצחק. רוצה לומר הידבקו בעניין האלוהי והטובה בעולם הבא, ואין לישמעאל ברית ולא לעשיו. Ishmael has no brit and neither does Esav. ואם הצליחו. ועל הארץ הזאת נפלה קינה בין יעקב ועשיו, and Yaakov and Esav were fighting over this land. עד שנדחה עשיו, until Esav was denied. I'm just reading. עם חזקתו מפני יעקב עם חולשתו, ונבואת ירמיהו במצרים בא ובעבורה. When Yirmiyahu spoke from Egypt, he spoke about Israel. וכן נבואת משה ואהרון ומרים, and Moshe and Aharon and Miriam, they spoke about Israel. That's why they could have nevuah outside of Israel. ואומנם סיני ופרן כולם מגבול ארץ כנען מפני שהם מן ים סוף, and even though the Midbar was part of Israel too, כמו שהבא יפרח, ושתי את גבולך מים מים סוף ועד ים פלישתים ומדבר עד נהר, ומדבר הוא מדבר פרן, זהו גבולה הדרומי והנהר הוא נהר פרת גבולה הצפוני. So it's within certain borders of Israel, והם המזבחות שהיו לאבות אשר נענו בהם באש העליונה והאור האלוהי. וכבר הייתה עקדת יצחק אבינו בהר, and the Akedah of Yitzchak was just up the road on Har HaMoriah, minutes away from us. היה בו ישוב הוא הר המוריה ונתגלה הדבר בימי דוד כשעם יושב. You see, Yerushalayim is written many times in the Tanakh of the Jewish people. It isn't written once in the Quran. Not once. But it's all over the Tanakh. כי הוא המקום המיוחד המוכן לשכינה, ערבנה, יבוסי, עובד וחורש. Abraham שם המקום ההוא השם יראה. Abraham called it the place of fearing. וביאה בדברי הימים כי בית המקדש בנוי בהר המוריה. The בית המקדש is built on Har HaMoriah. Even the BBC call it Temple Mount. Whose temple? Our temple. Temple Mount. They call it Temple Mount. The whole world calls it Temple Mount. Our temple. ושם מבלי ספק המקומות שראויים להיקרא שערי השמיים, and these without doubt, ladies who live here, these without doubt, says the Kuzari Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, are sha'arei hashamayim, they are the gates of heaven. Standing at the kotel, you are praying directly at the gates of heaven. הלא תראה יעקב אבינו שלא תלה המראות אשר ראה לא בזכות נפשו ולא באמונתו בלבבו, אבל תלה אותו במקום. When Yaakov, when he prayed and he saw God, what did he say? He was on that bench outside Midrashet Harova. I'm pretty sure that's where he was, I say objectively. He was sitting on that bench opposite the barber. You know, the guy who cuts hair. I don't know what you call them in America. You call them barbers in America? Okay. So he's sitting outside the bench at the time when the girls had a free weekend. And he says, Ma nora hamakom hazeh. He didn't play frisbee. He said, how much awe is this place? Ba'alav amar v'yifga b'makom hamakom hamiuchad. This is Beit Elohim v'shar hashamayim. V'alo tireh ki hu atak Abraham me'arso kasher etzliach v'haya ra'ui lidabek b'inyan Elohi. Abraham was brought from that land, chutz la'aretz, when he was deemed to be fit and suitable to be in this land. והיה לב הסגולה היא אל המקום אשר בו תיגמר השלמתו, כאשר ימצא עובד אדמה אילן שפריו טוב במדבר ומעתיקו אל אדמה נאבדת. And then he says, just as a fruit will grow better if it is put in its right environment. So the Jewish people can grow in Chutz La'aretz, that it's growing in a greenhouse. It's not the correct environment. The correct environment for a Jew to grow is Eretz Israel. There can be a fruit that works, it grows in the midbar, it grows in the desert. When you move into the place it should grow, it will grow better. Over the page, nearly there. מדברי, sorry. וירבה אחר שלא היה נמצא אלא בעת שישראל ומקום שישמע. לכן שבה הנבואה בזרעו בארץ כנען. So this immediate introduction by the Kuzari is referring to the inherent kedusha of this land. Now look at the halacha, okay? Because I want you to see the halacha, and it's not just about yadachim and mifkad and moshava. Look at what the Rambam says. I'm reading you the halacha. V'lei mandapalik. This is halacha that is not argued with. Asur latzeit me'eretz Yisrael l'chutz la'aretz le'olam. You are never allowed to leave Israel. Ella, there are a number of exceptions. Lilmod Torah, or lisa isha, or to get married, or la'asil min ha'akum v'yachzor la'aretz, or to do what you have to do, but then to come back. You have to come back. You have to come back. If you don't come back, I'm coming after you. Oh man. If you don't come back, I'm coming after you. You have to come back. You can go out to make a trade if you need to. What does lishkon mean? You cannot make it your permanent residence. It can't be your permanent. You can go there, lagur sham, but not to settle there. Unless there is terrible famine in Israel, until the price of food rises a lot. He gives a financial definition of when a person is allowed to leave because of financial constraints. Next halacha yud. Gedolei hachachamim hayu menashkim al techumei Eretz Yisrael. Chazal used to kiss the land. We also did. In the old days, we had an airport here where you got off the plane and you went onto the tarmac. And we all did it. We came off the plane, we came onto the tarmac, and we kissed the ground every time. And it comes from Chazal. Umenashkim avanea, we kiss the stones. Umitgalgalim al afara, and we roll in the dust of Israel. This is rational Rambam. We roll in the dust of Israel. V'chein hu omer ki ratzu avadecha et avanea ve'et afara yochonenu. Where's that come from, that pasuk? You know the first part of the pasuk so well. What's the second part of the pasuk? The first part of the pasuk is Atatakum Terachem Sion. You turn around to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Tehillim Kuf Bet, and you say Atatakum Ki Eit Lechen. That is the time for you to bring us back. But no one ever sings the second part of the pasuk. Why is it the time to bring us back? Ki ratzu avadecha et avanea, because we yearn, because we love our land. You have to sing both parts of the pasuk. Ki ratzu avadecha et avanea, and then atataku. God will bring us back, and we can make that demand of God. Im ratzu avadecha et avanea. Halacha Yudalef Amru Chachamim, and this is lovely for me. Lucky for me. Kol hashochem be'Yisrael avonotav mucholin. All of my teenage years, all of those avonot of the past, I live in Eretz Yisrael. Shne'emar, obviously it means a bit more than that. Uval yomar sheken chaliti ha'am hayoshev ba naso avon afilu halach ba'arba amot zochel chai olam haba. You walk 4 amos in Israel, chai olam haba. This is the Rambam, ladies, and he's quoting the Gemara at the end of Ketubot. And if you're buried here, you get your sins atoned for. It's like the place that you are is an altar for atonement. And if you're already planning, okay, Rabbi Wilson, you just I'll go there for my life and I'll get them to bury me. No. Rambam, no, says the Rambam. No, says the Rambam. Gooey! I'm going to miss saying gooey so much next year. I think I'm going to have to name someone gooey so I can say gooey. Gooey! So the Rambam says that if you're thinking, so I'll be buried in Israel, he says it's better to come here when you're alive. It's better to be here when you're alive. And nevertheless, our Gedolim used to bring their dead people and bury them here. Halacha Yudbet, one more halacha. I'm just quoting, right? I just found this halacha and I just wanted to share it. Le'olam yado adam be'eretz Yisrael. A person should always live in Israel. Now, just to point out to you, afilu be'ir sheruba akum, even if you are living in Ramallah. It is better to live in Israel in Ramallah than to live in Brooklyn. That's what the Rambam says. Yes, read the Rambam. Afilu be'er sheruba akum. Read the Rambam. Va'al yado b'chutz la'aretz va'afilu be'er sheruba Yisrael. So Rambam. I'm just a mouthpiece. It's the Rambam. That's an incredible statement, right? It's hard to reconcile that with the challenges one has. And maybe not Ramallah because it might be a bit dangerous, but you live in a place that is entirely irreligious. It's better to live in a place in Israel that's entirely religious than to be in Lakewood. That's a Rambam. That's what the Rambam says. I'm sure there are many people of Cholek, but I couldn't find them. I didn't look. Someone who goes to Chutz is like he's an idolater. Like. And then he says, and the only reason I gave this is not because I got the mistake of the date and I'm going back a week to Erev Yom Ha'atzmaut, so I do enjoy myself even if you don't. But the Shemitah, one part of the Shemitah is a Kedusha of Eretz Israel. And I don't know whether you feel it. I feel it. I feel it a lot. I feel it when I get back from where I've been. I just feel the holiness of the place. So part of this parsha, part of the mitzvah of Shemitah underlines, emphasizes Kili Kol Haaretz, but specifically Eretz Israel, because there is no other country, that's a fact, halachically speaking, that keeps Shemitah. Right? There's a machlokas about Chadash in Chutz La'aretz, where the Chadash is Midorait in Chutz La'aretz, but most of mitzvot Liyot Ba'aretz are only shayach in Eretz Israel. And Chazal say that was a disappointment of Moshe Rabbeinu that he couldn't come into Israel because there was a whole area, a whole region of halacha that he was never ever going to be able to keep. Next is Am Yisrael. So there's another element of Shemitah, there's Am Yisrael. Gad, bye. I've got eyes, I start to shake and then I realize it's like an airborne allergy. Not to Gabby, but to the abomination that was on her pad. I'm bringing my hammer tomorrow. Am Yisrael. Let's go to where is Am Yisrael in Shemitah? Girls, is it Tuesday morning? No, you're giving me the Tuesday morning look. Am Yisrael, you, okay? Am Yisrael. Where does Am Yisrael come up in Shemitah? Moreh Nevuchim, Chelek Gimel, Perek Lamed Tet. The Rambam says, "V'omnam kol hamitzvot asher sefarnu b'ilchot Shemitah v'yover mehem lechemla al bnei Adam v'harchava livnei Adam kulam." Shemitah is the absolute equalizer. If I owe you money, and the Shemitah year comes along, and I haven't settled my debt, Shemitah cancels the debt. It cancels the debt. Now, let's try a bit, okay? I'm as tired as you. I got back from the airport at 1 a.m, so I am tired. It's not a good night to come back late. Monday night would be better to come back late because I only choose half the day on Tuesday. But Sunday night's not a good day to come back late. I even had a lay-in this morning, got up at 5:15. So it's really like, yeah, you look shocked there. You get caught up in life in various financial debts. And the financial debts pull you down because wealth creates wealth and poverty creates poverty. What do I mean? People who are rich, they have the money to invest further. They have the confidence to invest further. Not always, but very often, their wealth enables them to become wealthier. And if you're on the other side of the scale, you're just in a rut. You just can't get out of it. By the time you've paid your bills, you've got more bills, and you're in a minus, and then your checks are bouncing, and then the bank wants to speak to you, and you can't make headway. And then Shemitah comes along and cancels your debts. That's incredible. Every Shemitah year, Shemitah comes along to the people and says, you can start again. I'm not talking about prosbol and what Hillel introduced because people wouldn't learn, but the Ikar, now above and beyond all the debts being cancelled, I just don't know how much of the halacha you're aware of. I have a field full of oranges. You walk into my field and eat what you want in Shemitah year. You eat what you want. It's not my field. God confiscates that field from me in Shemitah year. My food is hefka. I must allow you to eat it. I cannot sell it to you. It's kedushat shmiyit. It grows on its own. Fruit grow on their own on the tree. You come, you take the fruit, you eat them. You can be the poorest tramp on earth, but you can eat this fruit throughout the Shemitah year. And I cannot invoke my ba'alut, my wealth and my power on you and say you cannot come. And more than that says the Torah, when you do this act of tzedakah comes from the word of tzedek, it's the right thing to do, you will only benefit. You think you're going to lose money, you will only gain. That's what the pasuk says. We free our slaves and poor people, hashmatat ksafim v'hashmatat avadim, umehem iyum v'tikun ha'parnasa v'chalkala ala hatmada u'ayot ha'aretz kula shmura leba'alim efshar ba lemchira lesmitot. Because there is an inherent holiness to the land of Israel, we cannot evoke full ownership on the land of Israel. We cannot evoke full ownership, and therefore we have to give back. So have a look now at the Rambam in Hilchot Shemitah. Mitzvah taseh lashmit hamalveh b'shvi'it shenemar shemot kol ba masar yado. You have to cancel all debts in the Shemitah year. V'hatovei achov she'avra alav shvit ava alo ta'aseh. And if I come and ask you for money after a Shemitah year, which you owe me, I have done an Isur Torah. I'm not allowed to take money back. It's all cancelled. All bets are off. All debts are off. Halacha beit, אין השמיטת כספים נוהגת מן התורה אלא בזמן שהיובל נוהג שם שמיטת קרקע, שיישוב הקרקע לבעליו בלא כסף. So real Shemitah only works with finance when the land is under Shemitah. And listen to what he says in Halacha Gimel, Midivrei Sofrim Midrabanan, Shmitat Kesafim Noheget Bizman Hazeh B'Kol Makom. Cancellation of debts happens every Shemitah Midrabanan, even now. And that is why on an Erev Shemitah year, your parents would have written a prosbol, a certain document that hands over all debts to a Beit Din so they don't get cancelled. That was a takana of Hillel Hazakeh. So if we have in the first element of the Shiur, we spoke about Kedushat Haaretz, the emphasis is on the land. Here the emphasis is on the people. This is a social equalizer. You know, once a girl asked me, she was doing Sefer Mishpat, she was doing Parashat Mishpatim, and it talks about slaves. Now, when you read the word slaves, especially when with the kind of history, recent history in America, history in South Africa, history in Egypt even, people's view of slaves, people's idea of a slave is oppression. In halacha, when we have an eved ivri, it's not. It's actually correction, because there are laws to being an eved ivri. The law is that if you are a Jewish slave, you have to only work in the profession that is your profession. You have to live in the same way that the Balabayit lives. If he's not prepared to do this, he can't have an Eved Ivri. What makes you an Eved is simply that what you earn goes to the Balabayit, because he is looking after you. There is a lot of socialism in the Torah, a lot of caring for the Zulat, and so therefore Shemitah as well, even though there is an emphasis on Shemitah to do with the land of Israel, there is an emphasis also on Am Yisrael. So what about Torah Yisrael? So go to my next source, the Sefer HaChinuch on Torah Yisrael. Those of you who does Rabbi Bailey do Sefer HaChinuch? Is that what he does, or he does Rabbi Bailey? No, when he does mitzvot, why and how and why? He just does Rabbi Bailey. Okay, so Sefer HaChinuch, when he goes through, there are certain books that there is a machloket on 613 mitzvot. There are slight differentials by defining which are the 613. No machloket about the number, but there's a machloket about defining which ones are. And there are certain Sefer HaMitzvot where they count the mitzvot but explain them too. So Sefer HaChinuch, who wrote this book for his son, Sefer HaChinuch, he tells you where the mitzvah comes from. Then he gives you the idea behind the mitzvah according to the way he understands it. And then he gives you a few halachas, not all of the halacha, but a few halachas. Misharshei HaMitzvah, he's trying to explain Shemitah. Now, we've explained Shemitah from the facet of being Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. We've explained Shemitah as being the facet of the Kedusha of Am Yisrael and the equalizing factor. Now listen to this. לקבוע בליבנו ולציית ציור חזק במחשבתנו עניין חידוש העולם כי ששת ימים עשה השם את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שלא ברא דבר כתיב מנוחה על עצמו. De facto, what happens in a Shemitah year is if you cannot work your land, you have a year off. To this day in Israel, any teacher after 7 years has a sabbatical. And it's not stomach sabbatical. The money that is put aside for them by their employer has to be used for educational purposes. Meaning inherent within the idea of Shemitah, if I can't work the land and I'm a farmer, so what do I do all year? I have a year off or a year on. And what do I do in that year? In that year, I take myself aside and I look inwards and I look outwards and I have time to think who I am and what I am and what life is about. That's what I do in a Shemitah year. That's what you're doing. That's what some of you have almost done. That's what some of you are in the middle of or in the first third of. You leave the world for a year. You dissociate yourself. You detach yourself from the world of business and the pressure of finance. And you're free to think. That's Torah Israel. We need to do this every day in one way or another. We need to find time every day. When we start earning money, when we start going into the world, there has to be a time every day where we're poresh, where we separate ourselves in order to get ourselves into some kind of position of understanding. We cannot just keep running forward and running forward and running forward without any form of analysis. There are so many events happening in the news that you just can't keep up with them. Pretty big event, right? That the president of Iran got killed in a crash. In fact, a funny report in France came out that the Israelis did it because he was killed in an helicopter. I'm not sure whether it was serious or not serious, but they kind of presented it as serious. Like I didn't read the article, I just saw the headline. Pretty big event that and they're about to kill a Jew in Iran today. There was a Jew who had a death sentence in Iran today. It got put off because they're in mourning. The foreign minister is a very capable man, and the president was there. Big things are just happening around the corner. Every time you turn on the radio, something's happening. And you need a break. Like it says, when Moshe was being taught Torah from Hashem, he stopped and he gave him time to contemplate. There needs to be time to contemplate. And when you get into the hustle bustle, which none of you think you've had hustle bustle because you've done a few exams in your life, you ain't seen nothing yet to what it is to make a living. To make a living and bring up children and run a household, that's hustle and bustle, that's pressure that doesn't end till the end of your life. Hopefully you get to pension, it ends, it slows down a bit. So how do you live a life, a life of goodness and quality? Only if you stop. So there is a section of Shemitah which is Torah Israel as well. It's a section where you have time because you're not working the land, because you can't do anything because it's asur for you to work the land. You go to the Beis Medrash. You go to the Beis Medrash, and within Mishra Chinuch, people do it once every 7 years. You need a time out. It shouldn't be only when you're 18 or 17 if you're from Montreal. It should be all your life. Every so often you need a time off where you can contemplate and think about things. I don't think we're doing it. I don't think we're doing it as individuals. I don't think we're doing it as nations of the world either. If you turn back to the front page, you can see something else here as well. At the beginning of Pirkei Avot, we are told that al shlosha dvarim ha'olam omed, that the world stands on three things: al ha'torah, v'al ha'avodah, v'al gmilut chasadim. There are three main ekronot, fundamentals in the world. One is Torah, one is avodat Hashem. It's not agriculture, it's not Torah avodah, it's avodat Hashem, and one is gmilut chasadim. The Maharal Prague has the most phenomenal perush on Pirkei Avot. And the Maharal says that there are three elements to our lives, three ways in our lives that we cannot become shleimim if we don't work in all three ways. The first is bein adam la'atzmo, is working yourself out. The second is bein adam lechavero, is having a relationship with other people. And the third is bein adam lemakom. Torah is bein adam la'atzmo. I know we get very involved in detail when we're learning Torah, but the purpose of learning Torah is for contemplation and renewal and refinement. It's about me and God, me and myself, my relationship with myself. The Torah was given to us so that we could live in this world and be of this world in a holy way. Gemilut chasadim is bein adam lechavero. I don't need to elaborate on that. It's obvious that gemilut chasadim, loving kindness, is bein adam lechavero. And avodah is bein adam lemakom. I'll remind you, I've said it countless times, so I will not elaborate now, but I think these three things are interconnected. That if you haven't got bein adam la'atzmo, if you're not okay with yourself, you will not get on with other people. You will not get on with other people. Most social problems start with me. Not your social problems, my social problems. It means that I have a problem and therefore I get upset all the time. I get frustrated. I get offended because I've got a problem with myself. If I'm okay with myself, people's comments to me won't make a difference. So if you haven't got bein adam la'atzmo, you can't get to bein adam lechavero. You can't be with people. And most people who think that the problem is someone else's, they just move from problem to problem for their whole lives. They run away from one group because they're a horrible group, and then they find the next group's a horrible group, and the next group's a horrible group. And one day, at some stage in the future, they'll discover that they got a problem. It's not the group all the time. Doesn't mean it's never the group, but it's not the group all the time. So bein adam la'atzmo, dealing with myself enables me to get to bein adam lechavero. And if I don't deal with bein adam lechavero, I can't get to bein adam lechavero. If I cannot have a relationship with people, I cannot have a relationship with God. If you cannot honor that which is tangible, you cannot possibly understand that which is not tangible. So we have those three facets. Now listen to Maharal says there are only three sins in the entire Torah. If a goy comes to me and says, do this or I'll kill you, I'm allowed to do. You know that, right? What are they? Avodah Zarah is one. Arayot, promiscuity, is two. And murder, three. Says the Maharal, listen to this, girls, hold on to your seats or hold each other. Hold on, look, get up. Get so excited by it. Listen to this Maharal. Says the Maharal, there are 3 sins, in case you didn't hear what people said: murder, promiscuity, and idolatry. Avodah Zarah runs parallel to Avodah. Murder runs parallel to Gemilut Chasadim. Promiscuity, acting as a behemoth, runs parallel to Torah, which is ultimate holiness. Listen to what the Maharal says. If someone comes and says to you, break one of these sins, you have to die before doing it. Why? Because al shlosha dvarim ha'olam omed. They're asking you to remove a pillar from the world. Would you believe it, ladies, even though we belong to a religion that sanctifies life? There are certain times in our religion that the religion tells us that if to live, you have to do this. It's better not to live. That if to live, I have to become a killer, I'd rather not live. If I have to be promiscuous, I'd rather not live. Al Shloshat were in these 3 elements. Now, finally, Shemitah has all 3 elements. Ben Adam leMakom, which we're just going to investigate a little bit more now towards the last part of the Shiur. Has Ben Adam leChavero, right? Because we have this social equalizer. And as we said before, it has Ben Adam le'atzmo, because you're learning all year, because you're not working. And that we always have to work in those 3 areas. I would suggest that we all put a lot of effort in Ben Adam le'atzmo, because I think everything comes from that. Sorting ourselves out, working ourselves out, trying to work out why I get upset when people say things, why I get frustrated when people say things, why I'm so sensitive to things, and everything will come from there. The final comment I want to share with you is Kli Yakar. We love the Kli Yakar after he said you should have all been the Meraglim last week, and had Midrash Harava girls been the Meraglim. I think he was talking about you, who would never have got into that mess. And listen to the Kli Yakar. There is a question at the beginning of the parsha. This is just a final comment. You'll find the Kli Yakar on the 2nd page at the bottom. I was preparing this year on the plane on Thursday night, and I was in economy, and I was trying. At one stage, I had the computer on one arm and my Diet Sprite in the other arm, and I was trying to balance it, and it fell. I think the Diet Sprite fell, because I went off to the computer first. So this was a shiur made in a balancing act. So the Kli Yakar, ladies, at the beginning of the parsha, we are told that Shemitah was given at Har Sinai. Behar, right, is Har Sinai. Everyone's asking the same question. What question are they asking? Everything was given at Har Sinai. Ma inyan Shemitah is at Har Sinai. Why does the Torah emphasize that Shemitah was given at Har Sinai? All the mitzvot were given at Har Sinai. What identifies Shemitah with Har Sinai? I want to share this Kli Yakar because I think it's unbelievable. So we're joining the Kli Yakar in the middle, right? Because he has explained a number of different reasons why Shemitah would be identified with Har Sinai. Now he says, this is my piece. This is what I want to add. And I think this will resonate with us more than any other year. That Shemitah teaches you emunah. There is a story, and I don't know whether you did the story on Zemanar, that goes back to, I've forgotten the name, Bacha. Did you go to Maskeret Bacha? You went there, okay. When you went there, did you visit the graves of the pioneers? Did you hear the story of the pioneers? Why did they die? No. They died because they starved to death because they wouldn't work the land in Shemitah. From people died of starvation. They got Baron Rothschild very upset because he was giving them money. And they died because they wouldn't follow Heter Mechira. They were very, very from. They wouldn't follow Heter Mechira, which is a fine psak, but the Israeli rabbis were more machmir than the Chutz La'aretz rabbis. and they starved to death because they wouldn't work in the Shemitah year. Mamash Kach. You heard that? You didn't hear that story? I mean, anyway, it's a story there with Rav Moliver and the Baron Rothschild and so on and so forth. I think Rav Moliver was brought there after he died. You know, when Rav Moliver was brought to Mazkeret Bacha, years after he died, his body had not decayed. There's Eidos, his body hadn't decayed. They buried a full body when they buried him in Mazkeret Bacha. It wasn't immediately after he died. One of those. The Emunah v'Bitachon. I'm a Jew. Imagine this, ladies. Just imagine this. Emunah v'Bitachon. My livelihood is my field, my produce. Okay, that I go out, I plow the land, I sow the land. I have money from last year's crop. Now I work on this year's crop, and so on and so forth. This year I'm not going into the land. I'm not plowing the land. I'm not plowing the land because God said it's an Issur Torah for me to. I'm not sowing seeds because it's Issur Torah, and my food is hefker. Imagine if your father owns a store, leaving the store with the door open on Rosh Hashanah and coming back the next year. Emunah, no, you need incredible emunah to do. You're crazy, you lost your mind. See what he says. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was worried. When we were in the Midbar, we ate manna. So every day a person leaves their house and there's food outside the door. Didn't buy it in a makolet. God gave the exact amount of food that each person needed. There was Be'er Miriam and there was man from heaven, and that's what they had. And so every day they had a lesson that food comes from heaven. What happens when we go to the makolet here? I have money, it's money I earned. I go to the makolet and I buy the food and it's mine, right? So what does the pasuk say at the beginning of Dvarim? It's my money, it's my wealth. I earned it, I worked, it's mine. So חשש הקדוש ברוך הוא פן בבואם אל הארץ יתעסקו בעבודת האדמה על מנהג הטבעי וכאשר כביר מצא ידם ישכחו את השם יעשו ביטחונם ממנו. What would happen is people would come and work the land. I don't know whether you ever work the land properly. I'm not talking about grapefruits for 3 hours. I'm talking work the land properly throughout a summer and plow the land and reap the fruit. And then you say, this is mine. These are my tomatoes. I did a tomato crop once. I don't even like tomatoes, but I felt they were like my children by the time they came out. You know, you mamish work with them for 6-7 months, from charisha, from plowing to weeding and to harvesting, going through the whole and irrigation, obviously, in the middle. And then you say, Vayasuru bitchonam b'Hashem, so they don't have bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'yachshavu ki kocham v'otzem yadam asalim et achalas, and they think, it's mine, I did it, it's mine. It's all mine. We do it all the time. Everything we do is mine. We never ever see any other facet to it. It would have been maybe different. I don't know, but maybe different. After the 6-Day War, people had realized that it was a gift from God and not thought that it was all to do with the army. And as a result of which, we became very complacent and ran into disaster on Yom Kippur, on the Yom Kippur War. It's not always mine. It's never mine. There's always an element of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. ועולם כמנהגו נוהג ויחשבו שהארץ שלהם היא והם הבעלים ואין זולתם. The land is theirs. I'm the owner. There's no one else. It's me. I do it all. Okay, so God commanded us. This is a doraisa, that every 7 years we have to leave our land alone. We have to leave our parnasa and understand that the parnasa comes from God. We've learned Mesilat Yesharim for most of the year, at least half of you. And he comes over as a pretty rational person. We're going to get to a bit of Mesilat Yesharim Od Ma'at, when Mesilat Yesharim says, he says it black on white, Ramchal. Other people say other things, but the Ramchal says that what we earn in a year, we were going to earn irrelevant of what we do. Irrespective of what we do, we would earn that amount of money. Why do we have to work, says the Ramchal? Because Adam HaRishon got a klala, b'zeh atapecha tochal lachem. We were told that we have to work the land. It was a punishment. We were told that we have to work the land. But inherent within that comment of Mesilat Yesharim is my parnasa is not in my hands. God gives me my parnasa. And sometimes I get fooled by cause and effect that I am giving me my parnasa. Bless you. Ki b'sheish shanim derech ha'omot la'asot shnei shanim zera v'shana achat bo. What the goyim do, and what most farmers do, is that they plow the land for 2 years, they reap harvest for 2 years, and they leave the land fallow. They leave it alone. And then they do another 2 years. V'akadosh baruch hu omer sheish shanim. But it says, no, we're not going to do what the farmers do. You're going to work the land 6 years, 6 years in a row, which isn't good for the land. Midei shana b'shana v'ani mavtichecha le'osid kocha shelo tachish. And the land will get stronger. Meaning, you do it my way, it will work out. But you need emunah. You need to have faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Many years ago, I came back home after Yom Kippur, and it was a year my wife has only started davening with us recently, and I arrived home and I ate, I broke my fast, and I collapsed into bed. I was very tired. The next morning, my wife, as I'm getting up and going to start working on the sukkah, my wife says to me, I didn't want to tell you last night because I didn't want to upset you, but someone stole my credit card and they've used it for 20,000 shekel. This is Sukkot. A lot of bills to pay in Sukkot. Minus 20,000 shekel in the cheshbon. So how are you meant to enter Chag HaSukkot with a deficit of minus 20,000 shekel? And I felt that year, I was patur from the sukkah simply because I was being tested in my bitachon in God in a different way. You know, on Rosh Hashanah, we crown God as king. On Yom Kippur, we pray to God as king. And then God tells us on Sukkot, if you really believe I'm in God, go sleep outside. Go sleep outside. Let's see how much you believe in God. What does the Kli Yakar say? He said, why is Har Sinai mentioned specifically by Shemitah? He says, what did we say at Har Sinai? We said, Na'aseh v'nishma. This is the proof of whether you really believe. Are you prepared to do this? And Jews have been doing this for centuries. Jews have been not going to work on Shabbos, losing their jobs because they left early on a Friday, because their emunah is in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that I'm sure many of your Zaydas did this, or your great-grandparents did this. They came to America, they wouldn't give them jobs, so they didn't take the jobs. Some did. They wouldn't take the jobs because it was their parnasa. It was their parnasa. It comes from emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we do our hishtadlut, but ultimately we're not cover anything. God decides. Like I said last week when I was speaking about Yom HaSmut, you can look at statistics, you can look at tactics, you can say, look at the odds, look at this, but we look at the odds, we play the odds, but we trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's really, really important. That element of emunah v'bitachon. As ma inyan shmita eisel Har Sinai, the inyan shmita to do with Har Sinai is that Har Sinai demands shmita. A person says na'aseh v'nishma, so you have to, at some stage in your life, there can't just be words. There has to be a commitment. There has to be a preparedness of na'aseh v'nishma. There can be no other mitzvah in all of Torah that is more reflective of na'aseh v'nishma than shmita. A person has to just stop working in the fields, leave the shop open for a year. What emunah! What incredible emunah that is for a person to do that. And that's real belief in God. So it's nice to think about God, it's nice to pray to God, but the real question is what about doing? How does it reflect itself in my personage? So here I just want to finish, but I want to turn this off and just say a word or two to you that I don't really want to put on camera. We are